probably had a really, really worse look on white people because once I started working with him and, he got locked up and he would send me, then I would be doing work for him and I'm working with these guys. And I had a really great relationship with these men and these men kind of helped raise me.
Right.
So if it wasn't for like the crime aspect of my life dealing with white people, I would have thought all white people were racist.
Right.
Cause in Boston, that's how you grow up,
Damn, bro. So dealing with violence that early in your life, and then just me being a fan and knowing like a lot of your backstory, a lot of the wars you've been in and, the stuff that you hear about you laying people down, whatever the situation is.
Blessed.
This young, how's that affect your mental health as an adult? Like, because I know it's a lot of people out there who have done violence to people and who have got violence done to them. And they still have these nightmares. They still go through mental health, but they ain't going to see no therapist, none of that. You don't deal with mental health issues?
No, listen. I mean, honestly, like when you're growing up like that, it's just part of life. You're not necessarily understanding that this isn't normal.
Right.
This is the way of life. And it's, especially if your pops is co-signing it, you're not looking at it, but as I've gotten older, maybe the last 10, 15 years, I've realized it has affected my mental health, I've been living with it for so long and it's been normal, going to a lot of wakes. We used to average 120 murders in that little 20-mile radius. And,
120 a year?
A year. And Boston was bad. It just, when they put out the top cities the reason why we never made it was because they didn't base it on, it's based on per capita. So Boston is a city, right? So you have your Irish in South Boston, your Italians in East Boston. And you just have this little part where the black people are, right? Just like in probably every major city. So the only thing is that if Roxbury was its own city, then we would have been like top 5 every year. Like you see in Miami, once they broke it up, it's like 22 different municipalities, I think. That's when Carroll City, or what they call it now. What's Carroll City called now?
Miami Gardens.
Miami Gardens. That's when.
No, he still called Carroll.
Carroll City, but that's when Carroll City, Miami Gardens started being number 1 for a long time because they had their own police force. So now it's going per capita in that area. See, if we did that, if Roxbury had its own police force and broke away, we would have been the same thing. If it was just one municipality, just Miami, then Carroll City wouldn't have made. You understand what I'm saying? It would have been a bigger place with more people to base it over. So Boston was always dangerous. Look, I grew up and I don't like to, a lot of times when you're on the internet, people glorify violence and they make it seem like but I've seen like, at a young age, a lot of like, trying to find the right, like really gory stuff,
No, for sure.
A friend of mine, like back in the days, there wasn't no, like, nines and everything. Everybody had pump shotguns. So if you got hit with a pump, especially if it was sawed off,
you losing a limb, son.
Not only that though, like my man, half his head got taken off. Face, my man Rock in my group, he died in my arms. It's
damn.
It was a lot.
How old were you then?
I was probably like
20.
I started seeing like death like maybe about 15 all the way, and it was to the point where I didn't even want to go to no more wakes. I can't do it no more. Like a lot of my friends, but it was almost like I got numb in my 20s. I necessarily never cried too much. I necessarily didn't, like if somebody died, it was just, we back on the block tomorrow. Not that we didn't miss them, but it was just so normal that it became like, it just didn't necessarily affect me. And then now later on, I noticed there's situations I get in, man, and I just ball out because, man, I didn't know it. But then I realized like, I got traumas and I got, what I'm saying, from back then, but I never knew it back then. It was just a part of life, man.
You never, as an adult, got into any therapy, none of that?
Well, when I started doing reality TV, most of the reality TV I was doing had therapists.
Oh, really?
Well, other than Love and Hip Hop, of course.
Right.
Right? But like when I went on Marriage Boot Camp and,
oh, that was
Love Goals, there was a few other ones where, they'd have a therapy session. And to be honest with you, that's where I did get help. I kind of started figuring things out at these reality shows when I was in there because, you go in there with your partner and, you know, it's, you know, y'all are arguing, y'all are going through it. But I really was trying to get therapy for self.
For real.
Not necessarily for like relationship therapy.
Right.
Just, what the hell's the matter with me? Yeah. Because I didn't know anything was wrong until I started hitting my adult age. My adult, you know, and when you say adult, like people think you in your 20s, you're an adult. Like, sure, you have adult situations, but your brain necessarily isn't developed enough to be a full adult,
right.
even in your 20s.
Right.
I realized like you realize so much as you get older.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That I necessarily wasn't, I was doing adult things from the street perspective, but my brain wasn't developed as an adult.
As
you know what I'm saying? Adult. And I realized that now, like I was doing a lot of, like, you know, in my 30s, still doing stuff that wasn't adult,
right?
Wasn't mature,
right?
You know what I'm saying? So in our community, in our culture, it might not be the same ways to be an adult as somebody else's culture. But when you're growing up in the street, you know, as a young man, you know, you can't be weak. You don't want to show weakness.
Exactly.
You know, you know, and then the thing with my father, like the things he taught me, you know, even though a lot of these guys, a lot of these older guys, these mob guys and stuff, even though they're doing crime and violence and, you know, it happens, there are still principles and codes in there that really have still influenced my life today.
As a man.
For the good, as a man.
Yeah.
And, you know, man, I'm grateful for that. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, you don't see that in this generation. And if you don't have a strong adult figure, and not necessarily they have to be in the streets to have these codes, you could be a working man. You know, you just gotta, there's no gray area. You know right, you know wrong. There's no sense in debating what's in the gray area. You know, you just have to be true to yourself.
That's powerful.
You know, and I had to be true to myself.
That's powerful. I'm into